こんにちは、ハリケーンフットボールです。今回の教材は、リバプールの遠藤航に関する動画です。現在は移籍期間ですが、リバプール専門のジャーナリストであるデイビッド・リンチは、選手の補強はチーム内にもあるといい、特にステファン・バイチェティッチが、良い追加のメンバーになるのか、という観点で話しています。バイチェティッチは、遠藤航よりも、よりグラベンバークに近い、ボールを持ち運べるタイプの守備的ミッドフィルダーだという位置づけだと思いますが、昨年のデータを見ても、遠藤航がリバプールのレギュラーとして活躍した2023、2024年シーズンのデータと比べながら、グラベンバークの控えのポジションを遠藤航と競う観点では、まだまだ遠藤航に及ばないと話しています。他のチームから補強される可能性もありますが、現時点での6番としての2人を、どのように比較しているのか、チェックしてみましょう。
Now, because it's the summer transfer window, there is rightly a lot of excitement around the players that Liverpool might be about to bring in to help them in the defence of the Premier League title. But I do think it's worth remembering there are a few players already on the books at Anfield who may be able to make more of a telling impact next season than they did in the last. And I think chief among them really is Stefan BAJCETIC, who of course spent last season out on 2 separate loan stints. Now, you will remember when he broke through into the first team at Liverpool, there was a lot of excitement around his potential. He was a bit of a kind of bright spot in a difficult season for the Reds. Since then, he's been plagued by injuries and had real trouble with that, getting back to fitness. And although he did manage to do that prior to Arne Slot coming in and then was joining in pre-season with the idea of getting a full season under his belt, unfortunately the manager then decided that he needed a loan stint to get himself back up to sharpness. So the big question, of course, is now that he's come back from that loan stint and he's available to be part of the first team squad, is he ready to do that, and can he make an impact for Liverpool next season? Well, as usual, I've taken a dive into the numbers to try and find out whether that's possible. And before I do that, quickly, I just want to talk about, of course, the basics around what he's done last season. Now, of course, there were 2 separate loan stints. The first of those with RB Salzburg in the first half of the season. The second half of the season, then he returned to Spain, his homeland, to join Las Palmas. And 12 league appearances and 6 Champions League appearances at Salzburg. But of course, Pep Lijnders was sacked in December, wasn't he? And he was a bit of a key ally for BAJCETIC at the club. He was so instrumental in bringing him in on loan from Liverpool. Once he was gone, didn't look like there was much prospect of BAJCETIC continuing to play, and that's why Liverpool saw a second loan spell. Now, of course, he did join Las Palmas and 14 appearances in La Liga for the Spanish club, and he got some big compliments you will have seen in his time there as well. Some comparisons even to Sergio Busquets, which is, I don't think you can get much higher praise than that for a defensive midfielder. But is there any legitimacy to those claims? Well, as I say, we'll have a look at the numbers to see if that's the case. Now, I'm going to start by showing you his defensive part of his scouting report from FBref. So this includes Champions League appearances and league appearances over the last 365 days and compares him to others in the top 5 leagues. So his Salzburg contributions in the league here are not involved in this. It's just La Liga and then his Champions League appearances for Salzburg in these numbers. But when I bring them up, you can see it. I still think that looks very, very impressive. I mean, you can see he's tackling an awful lot. He's in high percentile for all these things, intercepting a lot, winning aerial duels at a decent rate. So he looks like a bit of a defensive monster if you're to look at those numbers. Now, there is a note of caution in these. Of course, Las Palmas did get relegated, so there's a lot of chances to do these things. And of course, Champions League games for Salzburg, they'd very much be on the back foot in most of those, wouldn't he? So he's getting a lot of chances to get around and break up play, because these are not games that Las Palmas are dominating the ball or Salzburg are dominating the ball. They're coming up against bigger and better opponents, so that can boost your defensive numbers. But it is worth knowing, that, check this out, and he won 59% of his challenges in La Liga, 45.3% of his tackles, so winning them at a decent rate. It's not just about the volume. He is winning tackles and challenges at a decent rate, and it's also, of course, this is for a 20-year-old as well. He's not physically quite filled out yet, so I still think that is quite impressive numbers that he's putting up on the defensive side. And I think we had seen a little bit of that when he appeared at Liverpool, didn't we? That he was very good in the challenges and tackles and getting about the pitch and breaking things up. So that's supported, I'd say, by the numbers. Now, of course, we know if you're a defensive midfielder at Liverpool, you've got to be so much more than someone who can just run around and kick people, don't you? You've got to be very good on the ball as well, and that is maybe where we're seeing a little bit of an issue in BAJCETIC's numbers here. So bring them up, and you see on the ball there's a lot of red and low percentiles, isn't there? Now, again, it's worth mentioning there are some team effects at play there. He wouldn't be in a team that's dominating the ball in the Champions League. Same in La Liga, really. So, that will damage his possession numbers. But I still think even in a poor team, you would maybe be hoping for a little bit more than he's shown there. Now, he's still very good at take-ons, which, of course, is a very Gravenberch thing we've seen in that deep lying roll, the little drop of the shoulder and turning away. And that's before Gravenberch was doing that for Liverpool. We actually did see BAJCETIC do that quite a bit for Liverpool, didn't we? So it's almost his trademark move rather than Gravenberch's, but that's the only thing that really stands out that he's doing in possession. I think the numbers we're seeing there, they don't really look like someone who can come in as cover even and dictate play for Liverpool, who are so dominant in possession, aren't they? And at 74.8 pass completion, that is a serious red flag, I'd say, for a player who wants to play for Liverpool, particularly because it's not under Jurgen Klopp, it's under Arne Slot. He wants a little bit more of the ball, or certainly to be more careful with the ball, whereas Jurgen Klopp's football, at times it was, force it, play as quickly as you can. It's a bit more patient under Arne Slot, isn't it? So I think that 74.8 pass completion is very much on the low side. Now, I could show you now at this point his attacking output, but take my word for it, it's very, very much on the low side of things, and a lot of red in there and not very impressive. But I would also say, for a defensive midfielder, it's not what he's in the team for. I mean, Gravenberch himself, when you look at his numbers in the attacking elements, is not great for shots, for non-penalty goals. He did used to be, actually, if you checked kind of 12 months back, his numbers there were very good. But since he's moved into that deeper role, we're not seeing a lot of him in terms of those elements of the game. So it's not really something to kind of judge BAJCETIC by. But what I'd want to do, instead of showing you his attacking output, is offer a comparison that I think is relevant, and it's with a man who's placed in the squad that if BAJCETIC was to come back into the squad next season, he would be competing for. And I am, of course, talking about Wataru Endo. Now, I can only look at Wataru Endo's 23-24 season because he just didn't get enough minutes last season to make a comparison fair or relevant here. So the comparison is between BAJCETIC last season, Endo the season before. And I bring up the graphic here that kind of shows the comparison. I think you can see that BAJCETIC, as we expect, is doing more defensive things in a worse team, as you would expect, but Endo's still managing to do a lot of those, even in a Liverpool team that was dominant and good and challenged for the title in 23-24. He's still showing up quite well in the defensive numbers, and then you see the gap between the two in terms of the passing of the ball, the work that they do in possession. He's passing the ball much better, he's safer with it, he's better with it. It's actually an underrated element of Endo's game, I think, what he does in possession, his ability to kind of punch a ball through the lines. I mean, I don't think he's McAllister, I don't think he's even Gravenberch in that aspect, but he isn't poor in possession, is he? And I think he shows that enough whenever he does get on the pitch. So there's a clear gap there, is that Endo is much better, really, in the possession elements of the game, and more. And, I think if you put Endo in a Las Palmas team that was getting dominated as they were maybe off the ball, his defensive numbers would be better than BAJCETIC's as well. So I think they can see there that it would be a struggle if BAJCETIC were to come into the squad now for him to directly challenge Endo for that place as backing up Ryan Gravenberch. Now, I do want to caveat all this comparison by saying BAJCETIC is only 20 years old. The expectation is that he will improve as he ages, as he fills out a little bit more. But I think my big question about, the question I wanted to ask in this whole video really is he capable of coming into the squad next season? Well, if he needs to improve and he wants to take those steps to be even as good as Endo is right now, then I think, he needs minutes to get there, and he needs to play more frequently. And he's not going to displace Endo at the moment because he isn't a better option. And it is my understanding, by the way, that Endo doesn't really want to leave Liverpool this summer. I know there have been some suggestions he might want to go in search of more game time, but it is my understanding that he wants to play more, yes, but he wants to stick around at Liverpool and fight for the right to play more at Liverpool next season. He doesn't want to give up on the dream of staying at Anfield and being part of winning trophies, or certainly not just yet anyway. So he wants to stick around. So you put all those things together and you're thinking, where are BAJCETIC's opportunities really going to come? Endo's going to play in the League Cup, he's going to play in the FA Cup, he's going to be the first sub off the bench if you need to replace Gravenberch in a game. BAJCETIC isn't just quite there, is he, in terms of being ready to fulfill that role, and so he won't get the minutes that he needs to continue his development. So one thing I would say in terms of his long-term future, maybe was a bit of a red flag in terms of his readiness when he was loaned out with such speed by Arne Slot last summer. I think he saw immediately that BAJCETIC wasn't ready, and I think looking at the numbers, he would maybe make a similar decision this time. But I think his age means that maybe surely you would push more for a loan move, another chance for him to continue his development rather than sending him out on a permanent at this stage, because I think, you know, there is some promise there, and we've seen it before, and I think it's too early yet to make a firm decision on BAJCETIC. So for me, the ideal situation is that he goes out on loan for another season, and then we see what Endo wants to do. We see where BAJCETIC is at and move forward from there. So I'm going to wrap it up there anyway. Do let me know your thoughts on that. What would you do with Stefan BAJCETIC ahead of next season? Is there any way you would loan him, or do you think it's time to maybe just sell? Is it not going to work out? Do let me know your thoughts on that. And if you can like and subscribe, that would be massively appreciated. And I'll see you guys very soon.
次は解説です。ジャーナリストでもあり、比較的アクセントも抑えられ、聞き取りやすいように話しているとも思いますが、個人的には、このデイビッド・リンチのアクセントは独特に感じ、少し聞き取りにくい音に感じますが、皆さんはいかがでしょうか。これまで解説してきたボキャブラリーが多分に使われていましたので、いつもこのチャンネルを見ていただいている方には、知っているボキャブラリーも多いかと思いますので、本日はあまり解説しているものは多くないですが、いずれも使えるボキャブラリーですので、本日の解説をチェックしてみましょ
う。You of course spent last season out on two separate loan stints.
スティントは、ある仕事や活動に携わる一定の期間や任務を表す名詞です。日本語でいう短期的な在籍や一時的な勤務などにあたります。例えばサッカー選手が他クラブにレンタル移籍したとき、ローンスティントと表現されます。また、転職歴やキャリア紹介でも使われ、アスティントアットグーグルで、Google 勤務経験などといった使い方をされます。期間の長さは限定されず、要点は、その人がある仕事に従事したことを表す点です。
You of course spent last season out on two separate loan stints. You of course spent last season out on two separate loan stints. Since then, he's been plagued by injuries.
クラークは、もともと疫病やテストを指す名詞でしたが、動詞としても非常に頻繁に使われます。特にスポーツ選手や有名人などが問題や怪我に悩まされるという文脈で使われることが多いです。つまり、長期間にわたって困難やストレスを与えるものというニュアンスで日常的にも使われます。語源的には深刻な問題や継続的な苦しみに関連する単語として覚えておくと良いでしょう。
Since then, he's been plagued by injuries. Since then, he's been plagued by injuries. I mean, he was a bit of a key ally for BAJCETIC at the club.
アライは、共通の目標に向かって一緒に戦う、味方や同盟者という意味を持つ英単語です。国と国の同盟関係にも使われますし、個人間でも頼れる支援者として使うことができます。例えば、職場であなたの意見を支えてくれる同僚を表現することもできます。この単語は政治的な文脈だけでなく、LGBTQ+ などの社会的運動でも支援者の意味でよく使われるので、現代英語において非常に重要な語彙の一つです。
He was a bit of a key ally for BAJCETIC at the club. He was a bit of a key ally for BAJCETIC at the club. Is there any legitimacy to those claims? Well,
レジティマシーは正当性や合法性を意味し、何かが社会的、法律的に認められるべきかどうかを表す重要な語です。例えば選挙の結果が公正だったか、ある意見や主張が社会的に受け入れられるかなど、信頼性や説得力に関わる議論でよく使われます。学術的、法律的、ビジネス的な文脈でも使用頻度が高く、英語ニュースや国際問題の討論でも目にする機会が多い単語です。
But is there any legitimacy to those claims? Well, is there any legitimacy to those claims? Well, he's not physically quite filled out yet.
フィルアウトは、英語でとてもよく使われる駆動詞です。一つ目の意味は、記入するで、フォームやアンケートなどに必要事項を書くときに使います。もう一つの意味は、人の体に関するもので、体つきがしっかりしてくる。がっしりしてくる。という意味で、若い男性やスポーツ選手などに対して、成長過程で体がまだ細い時によく使われます。英語圏ではこの、体が出来上がってくるニュアンスを自然に伝える表現として非常によく使われます。
He's not physically quite filled out yet. He's not physically quite filled out yet.
いかがでしたか？バイチェティッチはまだ20歳ですが、リバプールでは期待の大きい若手選手の一人でしょう。怪我もあり、少し思った通りの活躍とまではいかないようですが、現時点で比べると、さすがに遠藤航には及ばない、ということがわかるものでした。実際には、他のチームから守備的ミッドフィルダーを補強する可能性は低くないと思いますが、いずれにしてもバイチェティッチにはなかなか茨の道でしょう。遠藤航に関しても、現時点ではグラベンバークの控えであり、サイドバックやセンターバックの緊急要員の位置づけだとは思いますが、同じポジションでの補強があれば、バイチェティッチのようにローン移籍というわけにもいかないでしょうから、ベンチ外にされることや、怪我人待ちという嫌なポジションになってしまう可能性を考えると、少し怖い気もしてしまいます。大きな動きがなければ、少なくともベンチメンバーとして、シーズンを迎えることになると思いますが、いずれにしても移籍市場が閉まるまで、プレシーズンが終わるまで、シーズンが始まるまで、厳しい競争はあるのだろうと思いますので、何があっても生き残ってもらえるよう、応援したいと思います。本日もご視聴いただきありがとうございました。またすぐにお会いしましょう。